All right, good evening, everybody. It is Steve with Real Progressives. Tonight, special night for me. Special night. Tonight is a special night for Real Progressives. We're going to talk about our opportunity to go to the first International World Conference of MMT at University of Missouri, Kansas City, UMKC. I am so freaking excited. It's going to be from the 21st through the 24th. People like Stephanie Kelton, Randall Ray, Warren Mosler, Scott Fulweiler, J.D. Alt, Rohan Gray, and a whole bunch of other folks. I mean, Fidel Kaboub, just everybody that you have grown to know and love, including Dr. Bill Mitchell, will be there. And I will be there. I will be there, friends. I will be there. And I am going to be presenting on Sunday, the first early morning panel I'll be presenting on. And then right after that, I will be moderating yet again another panel with one of my heroes, J.D. Alt. Very, very, very excited about this. It shows that our hard work has been recognized. It shows that the effort has been recognized. And quite frankly, it shows that our audience is listening. Folks, this is very, very exciting. I watch and I fight every day. I fight with people that have myths and legends out the wazoo, that they just keep throwing the same stuff at the wall to see if it sticks. And day after day after day, I watch you debunk them. Do you know how good that feels? Many of you all have never, ever heard of MMT or modern monetary theory before you came to Real Progressives. And now there are hundreds, if not thousands of you who understand that our nation cannot go broke, that our nation is not broke, and that we can, in fact, afford the entirety of a New Deal. All the things that we want, the entire progressive agenda is there for our taking. It's there for our taking. And it's up to us, we who have done the homework, we who have chosen to ignore myths and legends and lies, to focus in on saving lives. It is up to us to take that football all the way to the end zone. While the NFL is being boycotted, we can go ahead and still score points by teaching one another the finer points of modern monetary theory. So in celebration of this opportunity, folks, I want every one of you that can do this to show up. I believe that there's a late registration right now. It's like $175 for the whole weekend. That's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's another $40 get-together the night before where they're going to have a dinner where Bill Mitchell will be playing guitar, I guess acoustic guitar. And I think our own Sam Levy of Deficit Owls has said he's going to be bringing his sax. And everybody's going to be meeting and greeting all the people that you know and love, that you've learned the top, most freaking excellent life-saving economics from, and they'll all be there. I hope all of you can try to be there, and if you can't be there, hopefully we'll be able to live stream as much of it as possible. Very, very excited, folks. Do you understand that this knowledge is the knowledge that if the Green Party ever wanted to be relevant and to be able to actually enact a Green New Deal, it would be embracing MMT with both arms, legs, and every bit of its heart. If the Democratic Party actually believed that it was trying to save lives, it would embrace this openly 100%. Republicans, same with you, brothers and sisters. You guys can wake up to this as well and start serving the 99%. So in light of all that, tonight's going to be a quick refresher on MMT 101. So for me, the most important facet of MMT has been the fact that I never realized that the United States government printed its own money. It didn't make sense to me. I had caught into all the Ron Paul bullshit. I had wrapped myself up in the creature of Jekyll Isle nonsense. I believed that the U.S. was in a death spiral. Every time I turned on the news, every time I watched one of these late night infomercials with the gold bugs, I thought the coming economic collapse was right around the corner. I sweated it. I was petrified. I was worried, all the other crazy nonsense that went into it. And it never dawned on me how we always had money to afford wars. It just didn't dawn on me. Could not for the life of me understand how we could afford wars, but we couldn't afford other things. More to the point, I didn't understand why we had to sit there and go into these like hamster wheel battles of we got to raise taxes. No, we're not going to raise taxes. Oh, it's all that feckless government spending and so on and so forth. And the same exact fight day in, day out had me completely and utterly ready to check out of the system. I had no interest in hearing one more battle about whether the Democrats were going to be able to raise enough taxes to pay for something or whether the Republicans were going to go ahead and block it because they didn't want their taxes to go up. So once I realized that the United States government was monetarily sovereign, in other words, when Congress issues a bill, the checks don't bounce. The checks always clear and the checks always will clear. The Federal Reserve, as much of the garbage as I kept buying into, having read The Creature from Jekyll Isle twice, maybe thrice, and having been a Ron Paul sycophant who thought Ron Paul could do no wrong, I realized that Congress was the one that created the Federal Reserve by a law. It wasn't like the Federal Reserve existed somewhere. It was created. It was brought to be. It was created and brought into existence by the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. It wasn't like the Federal Reserve came to America and took it over by storm. No, Congress created it. And once I stopped allowing the friggin' crazy folks out there that were just wrapped around the axle about this 6% stock and didn't understand that the stock was non-transferable. It didn't bequeath any ownership rights. It was simply buying into the system, so to speak. Once I realized that all the gibberish about the 6% stock, I was just like, all right, so now that we can get rid of the nonsense, let's get to the meat and potatoes. And that's when I ran into Roger Malcolm Mitchell. Roger Malcolm Mitchell, I don't agree with everything he writes, but he writes some pretty damn good stuff on this thing called Myth Fighter. Now, we have some differences with him in terms of interest rates, basic income, and so forth. But one thing that we do not differ from him on is his very, very astute understanding, very plain-spoken, non-hedged words about what it means to be a monetarily sovereign currency issuing entity versus a monetarily non-sovereign, non-currency issuing entity like the federal government versus the states. When that light bulb went on, many other light bulbs went on. I still didn't quite understand the whole concept of taxes not paying for spending, taxes doing different things. I thought that our tax dollars were going to pay for people's bad decisions. I thought our tax dollars were going to Israel. I thought our tax dollars were going to pay for bombs and abortions and all sorts of other things and the gay agenda. And I thought that there was all these things that our tax dollars were going to. And so a lot of things started coming to light when I started to understand the function of what taxes do and what taxes do not do. And so when I understood that taxes drove the need for our currency, when I started realizing that taxes were used to keep a monopoly power of the dollar, when I realized that taxes were used to stave off inflation in an overheating economy, when I realized that taxes were used to show the costs of a given project or program, not pay for it, but just to demonstrate the actual costs. It started dawning on me, holy crap, every political battle that we have seen between the Republicans and the Democrats that was founded on how are you going to pay for it was a big old pitch battle. It was a sham. It was like Johnny Doolittle working over at the local 7-Eleven, getting off and putting on his Confederate uniform to go reenact the war. That's what it was like. It was like theater. It was like a big farce. And so all of a sudden I started thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. So if the United States government creates its own currency, creates its own money, and the United States government is king of the dollar, and the United States government is able to take care of our frickin' needs, why in the world are they lying about the debt? And then I started thinking about what was the debt. The debt didn't make any sense to me. Well, what is this $20 trillion a day, or 18 trillion, or 19 trillion, or 17 trillion, whatever the trillions were throughout the time? What is this ridiculous debt? Did Bush put unfunded wars on the government credit card? Did we have to take out a credit card from the People's Republic of China? Nah. Once I realized that that was a big, huge lie too, I started asking more questions. I said, so what the hell is this debt then? It doesn't make any sense to me. If we didn't borrow money from these people, then what is the debt? And I had to realize how silly it was that the U.S. government would need to borrow U.S. dollars that it prints, and it alone prints, from China, whose state currency is not the U.S. dollar. It's the yuan. So why in the world would we borrow U.S. dollars from China? And then the words came to my ears. Debt denominated in the U.S. dollar is not debt at all. Not debt like you and I know it. Because in order to take care of that debt, we simply keystroke it out of existence. It's just not that big a deal. So what is it? People buy treasury bonds. Countries buy treasury bonds. Frigging major companies buy treasury bonds. Why do they do that? Because they want a safe bet. They want a safe investment. What's a safe investment? 1 or 2% interest? Sure, why not? But it's always guaranteed. They don't ever say, oh, no, the treasury bonds have dropped. They're not worth anything. No, they're a safe investment. So why do we call savings accounts debt? Because on the ledger, when we go ahead and we sell these debt instruments, it shows up as a liability for the government. However, when we look at the other side of that, it looks like an asset to someone else. So one person's spending is another person's income, right? In this case, it was nothing. It was a bunch of time-boxed savings accounts that had a nominal interest associated with it. Nothing more than that. So why were we frantically panicked over this silly thing called the debt? Well, the debt is really just the national assets. Because what happens when these folks get their treasuries to maturity? What happens if they want to cash out of these treasuries? They get U.S. dollars. What do you do with U.S. dollars? Do you burn them? Maybe after you've received them in taxes, you do. But what do you do? What does somebody do with U.S. dollars? What good are they? Yes, they spend them. And so if they spend them on things, then guess what happens to the economy? The economy goes boom. So it's not debt. We didn't borrow any money from these people. We didn't borrow any money from China. We didn't borrow any US dollars from Brazil or Russia. They wanted to save in US dollars. So why? What happens? Well, let's say a country like China or Russia has money parked at the Federal Reserve from a trade imbalance where they are a net exporter or they're an exporter, and they take their earnings and it sits there at the Fed because those dollars don't do anything for them in their economy. They're there to facilitate trade in this country. So what do they do with those? Do they just let them sit there idle? No. They go ahead and flip them around into treasury bonds to earn a nominal interest rate. It's only smart to do that, right? So it's really no big deal. Do you think your bank panics when you go ahead and make a deposit at the bank? Do you think your bank panics when you go ahead and receive interest on your savings? Do you think your bank panics when it sells you a CD and it comes to maturity and you decide to dump US CDs and you go ahead and cash out your CD? No, not at all. They do this to take money out of circulation. They sell these things to stop a rising or a falling of interest rates. They do it to protect and to defend a positive interest rate, an overnight window, an interest rate for bank lending, you name it. So ultimately, why is it a big deal? It's not a big deal. Why do people in the progressive movement act like it's a big deal? Because they listen to Alex Jones. Because they listen to the Pete Peterson Foundation, a right-wing hack think tank, or they listen to bullshit from Fox News, or they hang out with LOL libertarians and they listen to nonsense there as well. I don't know. Ron Paul, whatever. They listen to Ben Carson. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It's completely and utterly economically illiterate, but they do it. And so our challenge as a progressive community is to make them stop doing such stupid things. All right. So the debt, every time the United States government has tried to pay off the debt, we have hit a massive depression or recession right on the heels of it. So why the fetish to do this? Why the fetish to try to pay off debt? People are running around saying that we're in debt to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve owns us. Well, why in the world did the Federal Reserve pay the Treasury something close to $100 billion in profits? Because the Federal Reserve is operated as a nonprofit. It doesn't keep any money other than what it makes for its operating expenses. The rest of it, every penny, goes to the Treasury. So why do you suppose people fap over nonsense about the Fed? Is it because their lives are boring? Is it because they've watched too much Alex Jones? Is it because they think they're progressive, but they're really a Ron Paul follower? Are they really LOL libertarians? Are they really conservatives in sheep's clothing? I don't know, but they're not progressive when they do that. Or if they are, they're very, very, very misguided, very, very, very economically illiterate, and very, very, very troubling because you cannot have a progressive agenda if you believe all the bullshit that these people throw out at you. You cannot have a progressive agenda if you're living in fear of debt and deficits. You cannot do it. And let's get back to the idea of taxes again. Taxes are deleted upon receipt. The government issues currency. It issues cash so that it can provision itself. It taxes in that currency so that you and I have to use it. It is the monopoly issuer. It is therefore the price setter. The government uses this currency to provision itself, not to get rich. The government neither has dollars nor doesn't have dollars. It keystrokes them into existence when Congress appropriates a bill. It's simple. It really is. It's so simple, it's probably too boring for most people. That's the problem. How can you sell vegetables to people when someone else is selling them a jelly donut, right? The jelly donut effect of the conspiracy theories about economics. The illiterate teaching the illiterati about how horrible debt and deficits are. Here's a jelly donut. Here's a James Bond novel. This has got to stop because it's founded in our belief that the federal government should operate like a household budget, like somehow or another taxes are the restraining factor for government spending, which is preposterous because the federal government creates the currency. It created a law that created the US dollar. When Congress says create dollars, its creature of Congress, the Fed, keystrokes those deposits into the Treasury's accounts. The Treasury then spends those funds to whatever Congress has allocated them to go to. Very, very simple stuff made very, very complicated by the conspiracy theorists of the world. That's shameful to me. I find it to be aberrant. But what can you do? This is the nature of the game. This seems to be prevalent on the left, that we pretend like we want a New Deal, all the while kneecapping those fighting for one, because we don't understand economics and because we read really, really dumb blogs at 3 a.m. while Peter Schiff is trying to sell you gold. Okay? So let's get on to the next part of this. And this is a big deal, right? So if taxes do not pay for the weenies of the world that hate the word fund, since taxes do not pay for spending, what does pay for spending? Congress, right? Congress does. Congress creates the funds. They have the power of the purse. They have the constitutional authority to ask this money to be brought into existence. They alone. Pretty cool stuff, right? So when you think about it, it's not dependent on our tax dollars. So why have they allowed so many of us to die? Why have so many of us had to die from destitution, from being broke, from not having medical care, to feeling hopeless and helpless as our families tear apart because financial troubles are the single greatest cause of divorce in this country? Why do you suppose a government allows that to happen? Why do we co-sign it with our economic illiteracy? I challenge you to watch people posting on Facebook and watch how bold and brash they are in explaining how the government is doing this, or how the petrodollar is doing that, or how all that, and they say it with such friggin' excitement and confidence in that ignorance, man. You talk about Dunning-Kruger effect. We are talking about the and the of Dunning-Kruger. We are talking about folks that don't even get how bad off they are, but they're speaking with confidence and authority, and they are really, really, really emboldened by the stupidity coming out of the Ron Paul camp and others like him, like Alex Jones and all the other conspiracy theorists like Cynthia McKinney and others who don't understand economics, but they speak authoritatively about things way beyond their understanding. So here we are. It's 2017. We're gearing up for another round of elections. People are ready to start cheering on their latest fanboy or fangirl. They're going to throw their signs up in the air, vote for me, vote for me. And none of these people understand economics to save their lives. And so all of our thoughts, all of our dreams, all of our prayers, all of our hopes for being able to save our families and being able to get health care, free college, green energy, you name it, all of that is contingent on us, you and I, and the rest of the people, getting rid of the bullshit and standing up and saying, oh, hell no, and telling these new people and the old timers, you better do our bidding or we are going to freaking make your life a living hell. A living hell. We, you and I, and the rest of us need to be confident in our truth. And the truth is blatant. It's brazen. You can see it. You can trace the accounts going through the friggin' balance sheets. This is simple stuff made complicated by people who don't want to bother to learn. And here's something else, too, that's very interesting. When people talk about inflation, they use the worst of Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman, a right-wing hack, the monetarist, the father of neoliberalism, the guy who came up with the now thoroughly debunked quantity theory of money, which basically said, hey, you print too much money, you're going to have hyperinflation, we'll all die. The same people that believe that Weimar Republic and Zimbabwe were brought around by printing too much money. They printed too much money, the whole damn economy collapsed. They don't realize, maybe it's because they don't want to, maybe because they like the narrative of it being printing money is causing the world problems. But the reality is that what caused both of those was political instability, a lack of productive capacity, and quite frankly, debt denominated in foreign currency, like the Weimar Republic that was completely decimated by the Treaty of Versailles. Their debt was denominated in French francs. And what do you have there? You have no productivity as a direct result of the war, as a direct result of the destruction. And guess what? Because of the brutal nature of the Treaty of Versailles and the punitive nature to the regular German person, the regular German citizen, they gave rise to Adolf Hitler. So Weimar had nothing to do with printing too much money. You'd have to be really swimming in the shallow end of the gene pool to believe that. And let's talk about Zimbabwe. How many knuckleheads run around talking about Zimbabwe? Zimbabwe, Mugabe took away all the farms from the white farmers. They burned the crops, and then they gave the land to the African farmers who had not been trained how to farm yet. Not only did they kill the crops, but they gave them to people that didn't understand how to farm the land. So all of a sudden, the little bit of productive capacity that Zimbabwe had been completely and utterly decimated. There was ridiculous political instability, and guess what? You could have brought barrels of cash, and you couldn't have bought an ear of corn because the means of production had been destroyed. It had absolutely nothing to do with printing money. So for those people that say that, once again, you know, this is how tall the mountain is that we got to climb to get past the economic illiteracy in this nation. No, the real issue with inflation, real inflation, is a lack of resources, a lack of real resources. Not the amount of money. It is too many dollars chasing too few goods and services. Well, the United States doesn't lack productive capacity. It doesn't lack humans. It doesn't lack any kind of productive capacity whatsoever. What it lacks is a population that understands that we are being duped and led to the tar pits by economically illiterate people and politicians who go with the popular mindset. That's it. The people that think that the United States is broke, leading us to the tar pits. The people that complain about deficits, we can talk about that in a second, completely and utterly taking us to the tar pits. So let's talk about something very important. My favorite subject, sectoral balances. Sectoral balances are made up of three key sectors. Those three key sectors are the foreign sector, the public sector, and the private sector. When you look at the three sectors, they each have a spout going into the tub, which is our economy. That economy is filled with either trade, because we're exporting goods and services and money's coming in. It's filled with federal spending, which is Congress writing bills. Or what we've seen for the last 40 neoliberal years, it's brought on by private debt through public austerity. We have facilitated the demise of the United States by going into unsustainable private debt to offset the government's lack of spending. So because people don't finish this all the way through, they just stop and say, the banks are bad. They are bad, but they're not the cause of it. The banks are doing what predatory animals do when left unregulated. The banks are doing what happens when the federal government ceases to spend on the public purpose. The banks themselves are, in effect, the United States fiscal policy done through monetary policy. And it is a terrible way of doing it. It's like pushing a string up a hill. It doesn't work. The only way for us to have a vibrant economy is for our federal government to spend to fill that bathtub up. Because we are not a net exporter by any means. We are a net importer to the tune of $500 billion a year that we must offset either in private credit or public spending. Folks like Steve Keen, who are not MMT, but they're MCT, or, these guys are very, very focused on the private debt issue. They're very, very focused on the fact that private debt is unsustainable. Well, MMT is focused on that as well. The difference is that we understand money creation, endogenous versus exogenous, bank-created money versus money spent into existence by Congress. So we have two different kinds of things. Congress alone creates new net financial assets. In other words, they're the ones that can expand the economy. However, banks, when they loan money, that loan is zeroed out when it's paid off. Only the interest gets to the bank. Well, guess what? That interest is money that was already in circulation. The only way new net financial assets come into being is when Congress authorizes spending. So let's get to the next thing, which would be Social Security. For all of our lives, we've been led to believe that we're paying into Social Security. They give you a tabulation of all your times you've contributed to it, and we sit there and go, yep. But all day long, they sit there and tell us that Social Security is going to go bankrupt. Oh, my God, what about Social Security? Social Security is a means of taking money out of the economy as a means of providing stability through inflation controls. Okay? It also gives you and I a sense of ownership for our hard-earned Social Security dollars. The reality is, though, that there isn't a piggy bank with old crumpled up dollar bills from Granny from 1919 in there. When your tax dollars are received, whether it's regular taxes for federal taxes or whether it is Social Security, those tax dollars are deleted. They're extinguished. They're gone. They vanish. Every dollar that the government spends is a new dollar. Every dollar that Congress authorizes is a new dollar. They don't recycle those dollars. That's not how it works. The government spends it once. That's its birth. It taxes it. That's its death. If you want to say the government's printing money, then receiving them in tax dollars is unprinting money. That's the cycle. It's so simple, it shouldn't even be remotely difficult to grasp. And yet we have this blocker because we think of our household finances. Well, getting back over here to Social Security, Social Security is never going to go broke unless Congress decides not to authorize spending. They're trying to privatize it like they do every other service because that is the essence of neoliberalism. So Social Security could be expanded. The age requirements dropped. It could serve as a basic income for people that opt for that. But in no way, shape, or form would Social Security go broke. In no way, shape, or form is your money just sitting there in a piggy bank waiting to be hatched out. That's not how it works. No, it's not. And that brings me to the cornerstone of modern monetary theory, which is the federal job guarantee. Warren Mosler calls it a transitional job. Bill Mitchell calls it a buffer stock of employed people. People rotate in and off the job guarantee. You set a living wage. You set living benefits. You, in essence, set the floor. Now, all private sector work, public sector work, whatever, has to meet or beat the federal job guarantee. Now, all of a sudden, they have to pay a living wage. Now, all of a sudden, the benefits have been set. Now, all of a sudden, when you're in trouble and you're needing money, you don't go to a payday lender because you're out of work. No, you go and you have a federal job that serves your local community. It's not make work. It's not busy work. It's work your local community votes on and determines is valuable, and then it hires people on and off the job guarantee to do those roles. Now, some people would say it's temporary. Other people like myself would say, I'd like to see it enable self-actualization. I want to see a robust job guarantee that allows people to focus on arts or tending to a loved one, a sick family member, or maybe children. I'd like to see the arts brought back. I'd love to see Shakespeare in the park. I'd love to see all of that. I'd love to see the beautification of our neighborhoods. All these things that are not profitable by the man, so they don't get done because there's no profit incentive. These are things I would like to see our government invest in our communities. I would love to see that kids can go to gym class every day. I'd love to see that kids can take art every day. And I'd like to see that kids can play sports if they want to get a team feeling, to go ahead and get exercise, whatever. I want to see kids be able to participate in whatever they want to do because we have empowered the community to serve the needs of the community. And the federal government, being monetarily sovereign, funds it. But for the states' rightsers and the 10th Amendmenters, they get to administer it. However, with a 14th Amendment hook that makes it so that they have to provide equality across. My friends, this eradicates involuntary unemployment forever, and it pegs our economy to labor. This is the most labor-friendly job guarantee you've ever heard of in your life. This, my friends, is how we turn the tide on neoliberalism. And this, my friends, is a crash course in modern monetary theory. I hope you guys will attend the UMKC World Modern Monetary Theory Conference, September 21st to the 24th. There are tickets available. I believe the late registration's like $175 for regular, and I think it's much, much lower for students. So if you're a student, if you're going to school, if you have a desire, please, by all means, go. The links for this place are in the narrative of this video. I would love to see you there. A lot of real progressives will be there. I'm talking about, I know for a fact that at least 20 people will be there that I know of from real progressives. That's pretty good representation. And you'll get to meet and be with all these people, and they will answer your questions. You'll have opportunity to hear tremendous panels, and then there will be after-hour stuff where people get together and talk through very real issues going on in the world today and how we can fix them with knowledge of real modern monetary theory economics. With that, I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. I hope you enjoyed tonight. I did. Have a great day, everybody. I'm out.